we normally, usually, everyday discussion type of. So today's trending topic will be in Sierra Leone addressing housing needs. The Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning collaboration with the Ministry of Defense to provide affordable housing or to provide housing because I'm not sure we've seen the NASSIT type of housing that was way beyond the reach of a significant percentage of the population. And so even though it was it was developed by government funds, but it was way beyond the reach of people. And so, to my understanding, when we talk about affordable housing, you try for make calculation or projection to enable the ordinary person who, on his own, lack the ability to get bank loans or the ability for earn enough to be able to save from which he can start building a house of any size. So when we talk about affordable housing, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about affordable housing for those who can afford it. So we talk about that. So we talk about joint promotion of the housing development schemes, military to develop housing estates, creation of new sites to decongest Freetown. And this thing about the decongestion. If we're going to leave it up to WISEF, we're playing with fire. If we are committed to this decongestion issue, there are people in the world whose expertise it is to decongest locations, which are like cities, towns, municipalities. But if we just decongest that based upon how we feel, not out of watching people and not studying at university and practically applied, we'll go create more mess out of what we're trying to do than what we already have. So what would you use all them word and decongestion and all this kind of thing? Let we just understand that without the input of experts, and I mean experts who have the credentials, not only on paper, but who have practical credentials to show that they can make a difference, we are going to end up not decongesting anything, as we do with the traffic system. Because, with all the movement and this and that and everything, the traffic system is not getting any better, it's getting worse. And my position is because we're using less and less experts, besides questioning the purpose for which some of these ideas come about, whether it's well-intentioned. But I don't think we put on the planning people who actually get the experience for do then things the way we wish. So we talk about that. So I hope we will be able for get the right people and for do the right thing. Then because it involves revenue generation and generation, how to raise money. It involves legal issues. There's a Restructured Act Cap 52, where Mr. Mengot will discuss. Institutional responsibilities, example, housing corporation like NASSIT. Also experience NASSIT will bring into the fold. For let would say they are really equipped with making a difference in the lives of people. How we go about land acquisition, not to for just use raw power and take land from people who are the real owners of land. The role of government invoking the Unoccupied Lands Act, Section 117 of 1960. So we'll question some of that act there, whether it is still relevant under our current constitution, and so on. So Mr. Mengot will elaborate on that quite a lot, and whatever comments that I have as a follow-up, we will do that. So let me just remind the listeners them about sources for Learn the Rich Way, just in case the one for call in. Most of our listeners them are familiar with the numbers them for call, but if I can have, a projection on the screen, if you now want for reach we, first of all, the lines are open as soon as we get started, as we have, or we are already doing. So if you get question in the midst of a presentation, they'll send in a written comment or call in, and then we'll go from there. You can reach me on YouTube. We'll go be on VOS television. You can reach me on Facebook. We're in a VOS television also. You can reach me on X. We're also on a VOS television. Then you go reach me on a VOS TV website like www.vostelevision.com. You go reach me on the radio station. We'll go be www.vosradio.com. And for you, for be able to reach me on the radio station, 191.9 FM, you will have to download you get for going to the Apple App Store or the mobile App Store, the Apple Play Store, or the Apple App Store for download the 91.9 FM VOS app for be able to get the radio station clearly, okay? Because not all 91.9 will take you there. You get to download the VOS app. Then, of course, in the car we on Twitch TV, which is VOS television also. In addition to that, if you call in, say we get a universal number, primarily in a WhatsApp, but besides the WhatsApp number, because we don't reduce our number now to just WhatsApp, you can just simply call you can put +1 343 997 5828. 1 343 997 5828 if I be able to reach me. So again, go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, download the VOS app, and then you will be able to reach me. Last but not least, we always get what we call the Diaspora Helping Hands, non-profit organization, where we always can try for remind people and say, down in www.vosdiaspora.org, www.vosdiaspora.org. Down in for raise money for picking them way they go school where the parents do not get the ability for support them, and the government not able to reach them for be able for let them get the necessities for further education like book supplies, uniform, and that kind of thing. So this is not for help the ambitious and hardworking student them who come from poor homes. And poverty, not to anything strange to we, because a good many of us come from very poor homes. So no amount is too small or no amount is too large. So anybody will listen to this presentation or this program and now get any problem with what you would ask for, please try to reach to VOS and the main number, and then any questions asked in terms of how the money, in terms of accountability, we'll be more than happy to tell you now how the money will be spent and all of that. In the meantime, let me pass on over to my colleague, Mr. Victor Mengot, make it elaborate a little bit on what we're going to be talking about today and where we'll go from there. So, Mr. Mengot, Naingo start, Naingo open the topics, then I will play a supporting role. So, Mr. Mengot, next to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shilon and Fambula and Akusha and everything. And today, what you want to talk about now, this whole issue of housing. Housing, the right to shelter, now a fundamental human right. Because we have to look at the people that we get this responsibility follow get better planned housing. And you know they plan housing in a vacuum. This week, we see say the Ministry of Land, Housing and Country Planning sign agreement or get a memorandum of understanding. What's in a memorandum of understanding? Say the two agencies, then the ministry and the Ministry of Defense, the two ministry, they sign this MOU for say, we so German then go be involved in housing reform. In my own view, why I think say something and they look to the Sojaman them, because we know say we get military engineering division where sometimes that skills they want use for develop housing. But when they talk about housing development, you get to look at land, the ownership of land. Who then get land, how they develop housing. You get to look at things to do with finance. Who side the money they come out. Third way they look at now the standards what they use for develop housing. Things like building codes. The professionals, the way they do housing. And why this topic timely? Because Christmas they come. This is not festive season. A lot of people in the diaspora, they go home. So man, we don't buy land where it they build. They go monitor in land where then they develop them. So man, they go buy land. For say, okay, why I don't work in that country here? La go find some place in my country where I go lay me head. Especially now we don't see say both na the West. When I'm in the West, na Europe, you take England, you take mainland Europe, you take America. They don't want to now. Even we don't get collapse. Some of we don't get citizenship, or you don't get in America, then call a green card. That's right of abode. Right? In England, we call a leave to remain. We are if President Trump don't say, then go begin look at we Sierra Leoneans and we don't get any privilege and they how we get them, or if we do any small thing for send we back go to our country. Which is not a bad thing because they will come out. But not bad like where you don't get away for many years. Then you go back where you're not prepared, you don't get place for lay head. And as you know, we young people them, deportation as stigma. When you go say, but look, they don't deport that man though. Until I be left you don't can join me. So how do we tackle this housing crisis? So now look at the plans now. We want to look at waiting the ministry then sign. And if then are the right approach, so now the introduction. And then the second part, we're going to talk about where governments don't get a gazette notice, where that gazette notice there, it comes from a law we've been get before independence, where they call the Unoccupied Lands Ordinance, where for so waiting an ownership of land, who get land. We want to look at that in the second part. Because land disputes na serious issue in our country. We see say the government just gazette recently some land there around the Sogo area where then they say people then for go verify the ownership of the land. If not, by 26th February, the land will go to the government. But before I go far, I want to talk about, say, waiting, if we get policy for housing, who then responsible and waiting them policy then they entail. Before we go now, can look this party agreement. This Kono Company agreements, that's what we call an MOU na like Kono Company, where the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Lands, Housing and country planning don't enter into, waiting for do, whether they're the right approach or not the right authority. So over to you, sir. If you want ask anything from introductory, then I'll go to we'll get the Sierra Leone National Development Plan for Housing. I will make the people know what's in that. And then we'll go look at this Unoccupied agreement and see what's in the challenges, the pitfalls. And if we want to do housing, what's in the best approach for provide affordable housing for people. Over to you, Mr. Shillong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mengot. Now, there are a lot of times I have always taken the position that we get ambitious pronouncements. I don't know whether the intention behind the pronouncements are as ambitious, you know? So I try for make people understand. It's about time the government begin to take things seriously. And because maybe the government has the best of intentions. Because even when they talk about housing, what kind of housing are we talking about? Are we talking about, because we have basically, I don't think we'll get the lower class, middle class, and upper class. We get the rich, we hardly get the middle class. We get the very rich and we get the very poor. Somewhere in between, some people then get them foot on each base. Okay? But other than that, we have not really made the necessary effort for create what you will call upward mobility, for let people then rise, for let people then get out of the bondage where they find themselves, inability to pay for get good health care, inability to get housing, inability to provide food, education for them picking, and on and on and on. So what do? We have to try to start, let me see. We have to start, I'm trying to make sure, so I'm getting some indication that I was getting some indication that my battery was getting low. So we have to start taking things serious. Let us just do the talk, the big talk. And I think, what you may see with the current government, with all due respect, with all humility, they are biting too much and they're having too much on their plates. I know it's impressive to talk about all the lofty ideas here, but I think the strategy should be what is achievable in terms of affordability in terms of funding, and so on, rather than just come up with all the lofty ideas here. Then at the end of the day, it just enrich certain people, or projects are being abandoned, and in the end, the people are left in the cold. So there are some issues that only just get. When I read, when I see this idea, this statement of understanding, or memorandum of understanding, I like to know what's in the essence of the memorandum, because I could see the relevance of the Ministry of Housing and Country Planning, the Ministry of Lands, because they're responsibility handy. But I will be more than happy to see of somebody to explain to me the relevance of the Ministry of Defense, even if they happen to get engineers, because engineering they in many categories too. So in America, they get the Ministry of Defense, they get the Army Corps of Engineers, they get different segments where they can do something for the community. But I don't think, they get involved in policy making. They can just delegate certain responsibility to them. But the primary purpose of the Ministry of Defense is to defend the country in times of war, if at all there are any wars. And in fact, this whole idea about wars is almost becoming a thing of the past, because you could find out that country where they use the money, the resources for uplifting people, then they progress very quickly, very fast, because rather than buying equipment, planes, ammunition, all these things for fake wars. Countries are not going in that direction, they much anymore. But all that they come as a result of people who have the best of intention for run the country the proper way. So if at all, if they are listening, the government is listening, it would be nice, with all due respect, if they can just make their own press conference, press announcement, tell us why is the Ministry of Defense necessary or relevant to the thing about land reconstruction or housing reconstruction, the laws around that. I can see if them talk about the Ministry of the Attorney General's office, the AG's office being attached to this. But the Ministry of Defense, and we all want for land, what contribution, what meaningful contribution will the Ministry of Defense add now? Aren't we beginning to dilute or stretch the Ministry of Defense into a category for which they are not trained? Because they everything about Ministry of Defense, they go demolish hosts or property in different places. All of this, to me, borders on lawlessness. The only way this demolition we would see, I don't say that over and over, if we want to run the country properly, the order to demolish should only come from one source, and that is from the courts. Only a court order should empower a ministry or an individual or a group or an entity for demolish property of any type that's not theirs, except, So again, if we just want to run the country based on sheer power, we'll be making more mess than we solve problems. So there are certain things that I think we get to give some serious consideration to if we are well intentioned to move forward. So I'm asking them questions here only, and then my understanding of this land act, this cap 117, concerning unoccupied land. I think the ordinance or the statute is defective, enough to pass constitutional muster. The reason why such a law still survives, that because these were being done under the common law, in which you go raise constitutional issues. But now that people are guaranteed protection of life, liberty, and property, you just can't pass any kind of law. Parliament can't pass any kind of law. So this caption 117, which is from the colonial times, I think is subject to being challenged in court. And my frustration is the lawyers, when I say lawyers, I'm talking about the relevant section of lawyers, them when at them job down there, should be taking these things to court. I've repeated over and over and over. It's hard for take their colonial ordinances here and accept them as present day law, because unless there is a superseding legislation, we say all laws that are still covered by the British common law are still relevant to the operation and the running of the country at present. They should be challenged, because these were laws. When you talk on occupied law, when you reach the definition, and you will see Mr. Mengot will read this unoccupied land, it seems like the government shift the burden. Instead of the government prove ownership, they are now telling the people, you prove to we, say, that you get this land. You know, number one is, if I get a piece of land, why should I have to come and prove to government that me get them? If the government thinks, say, na then get them, they are equally bound for proof, for get factual basis upon which to make such a presentation or for make such an assertion. You know, say, now government get this. But you can't tell the people, say, well, you get for proof, say, this land that you own, then get some other nuances in the statute where say the people and for proof that they get the land, or else if you not get the ability for proof that you get them, then you lose it. And so in law, there are historical precedents. So it's not only what in the law says. You know, what happens when, because we all know, say, before the white people come, most of the people who own their land, and they want to say, well, people, it involved Limbaman, Timiniman, Mindeman, who own lands in these areas that the government is trying now for, force them to come up with proof, you know, geared towards one tribe of people. And in those days, most of the people who owned the land, they were uneducated. These lands were not registered. So what's not the criteria for proof you land ownership if you not get title, you know, to the land in terms of written documents? So I think the government for try more so for keep in the spirit of the Constitution by treating people fair, letting not allow people that will get land just because they not educate for lost their land. And so how do you do this? Well, one weapon is to go to court. Now there is question, people can go say, well, the courts are not equipped, the courts don't have the guts, the courts will not rule against the government, but still do it anyway because that's the only means available to us. Let the courts expose themselves as not being efficient in dealing with the issue or as not having the courage in dealing with the issues. If that's how we want to treat with people then because they're not land book, now for take things in the hand with all us and the family for generations, well, let the record reflect that. History will judge them. So you just can't throw in the towel, you know, and then I get issue about occupancy because I think Mr. Mengot will read the statute. Then they talk about occupancy. And then the type of make it sound synonymous with ownership. I don't see how the two are reconcilable. You can occupy, you don't own, and you can own, you don't occupy. So there are a lot of issues here. And I urge the legal profession, the civil liberties and people in our country for actually tackling here and take issue and then for make sure say there is no ulterior motive in coming up with any requirements here. So let me go back to Mr. Mengot for now. So Mr. Mengot, if you don't mind, if we go start with the, I think, caption 117 of the unoccupied land issue, wherever you want to get started, let we understand, say, number one, we're dealing with a colonial law where constitutionally might not meet the constitutional requirement for protection of property.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, say, for let we viewers them understand what in the happen, I go want to talk about this issue of this unoccupied land first, where probably it go better way they don't understand them. Then we go back to this agreement between the Ministry of Defense because the two are related. So let we look at ownership of land and definition. I think say the control room, if we can play a video for we talk about land talk, where the ministry talk about ownership of land. They all dissect that, they all go through that, and then I go make people know this announcement the way they don't make and the law way they use for make the declaration, and which in a way might be in conflict with another recent law. So if the control room can play that video there for we, when a land talk, the law begin from there.
Because no other authority no dey. We go tell you say this is a community land. Now only the Ministry of Lands and go tell you this is a community land. And how community land they come about? Community land, now land where the ministry, especially for the Crown Colony, now land where the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning they identify say this particular land will they put also for community use, and many a time are for social services. Like if you want police post, you want hospital, you want playground, you want health post, schools. Then land there so now the Ministry of Lands now in the give to a particular community say this one is for this purpose. So for let you grab one we say this one our community land no. Now only the Ministry of Lands now go talk say this land now a community land. Now the issue about also headman then I party there. Then they will jail this money says from the kind of office. One particular one, the 1 or 2 days, where them a day before now, where they don't understand, based on my engagement with them, they don't know their responsibilities. They don't know exactly what they do. So now they tell the company that they just elect this VNT. Where you want to go this way also. Now they tell us, hey, not a responsibility that all for managed land inside Western area. The responsibility of headman and the Western area now for managed people. It is not about land management. Because all the land in the Western area and a Crown Colony, it belongs to the state. So it becomes yours when it is conveyed to you by the state. But you go sit down and somebody say, well, I mean, a hitman, now me don't sell and get. No, now grab, you don't grab the land. And he's committing an offense. Because the property belongs to the state.
Because I see somebody even they write about you in newspapers, them say, a man don't sell their land, you don't go take that land.
No,
and you land grabber.
Me for so long now, the newspaper or social media comments, reactions here and there, and they even countenance. I need read them. Now people like you tell me, I say, ignore that. Because not only newspaper, they solve your land problem. If you think you have right to the land, the courts they for let you go. When you go there, they will go now present the cadastral map for sure say this one is a state land and it has not been conveyed by the state to this headman. So you have no business buying it from this headman. The headman is responsible for manage people within any own jurisdiction. Whether that's small palaba then is solved. And for head government also for administer government policies in those communities. That's their responsibility. Their responsibility is not to sell the state land. But I think say men they don't come a long way. We don't understand that. And this morning I tell us, I say, look, this question of everybody say this time a land, this time a land, land only become yours when it is conveyed to you by the state, sanctioned by the state. Anything other than that, you are a land user because the land na Sierra Leone na it makes Sierra Leone a sovereign state. Now the land makes Sierra Leone a sovereign state, and if the land makes Sierra Leone a sovereign state, it means the land in Sierra Leone belongs to the states. In the provinces, it is in the custody of the chiefs. Where government they take land at the provinces for use, government they go compensate the chiefs for the use of that land. Because the land belongs to the states, the land makes Sierra Leone a sovereign state, and it is in the custody of the chiefs. So if the chiefs are inside their own chiefdoms, they also allow other people to also have access to that land. We are all land users in Sierra Leone. The land they become yours when it is conveyed to you by the state or sanctioned by the state. Now even the one when you own, whether you private property, when you do the survey plan, if you transfer the ownership to someone else, it has to come back to government. The reason why the director of survey is by law. Now they sign the document a day. Now they countersign it after you don't get your license surveyor. Right. The reason for that, before the colonial people are left now for let each and every Sierra Leone know say the land in Sierra Leone what makes what Sierra Leone, what you would call today Sierra Leone as a sovereign state.
Okay, Mr. Shilon, before you come inside,
Yeah, go ahead.
family and I are waiting the minister talk. Number one, waiting bring this one, make I play the video. The government on the 28th of August, through a Gazette notice number 371, number 73, they say the government will invoke a law for Unoccupied Land Act, Cap 117 of 1960. That is to authorize the repossession of unoccupied lands within the Newton to Songo corridor and surrounding areas. And take note of this, Mr. Shillon. It talk about ownership of land. The minister, they tell we say, all land na western region, na crown land. And I'll therefore go to that statute there. Where now, if we look at now an ordinance, gonna ordinance, where they may make before we even get independence. On the one hand, they tell we say all land na state land, and then it talks say okay, when it comes to the rest of the country, the custodian of the land and the paramount chieftain. But what our law look at now before we go to the actual law in the courts is that Songo area the way it talk and Newton. Now then at the boundary between the former colony and the protectorate. And I beg for differ from the minister we say all land na western region na crown land. No. Because you get private land, even when they talk about them village them. Now that makes sure you get village headman them. Then land and then a community land, you get community land. Now that makes sure you want to go buy land na then village them day. When you don't contact the landowner, we want to sell and go to you. The chairman or the village headman get for verify. But then, what I find very interesting about this Gazette notice, it is in contradiction of a recent law we then passed. The Land Commission Act 2023. The Land Commission Act 2023 set up district land commission, right, which involve local people, them, even the local authority and the village heads, them, where anything for do with land, it can go to them. But this announcement we make, there's no reference to the government's own law. We talk about district land commission. Okay, the Gazette notice, they talk about Newton to Songo, it call on the Colony and Environment Boundary Schedule Plot 1. And he named the places them. Langa place them. Because some of them place them there, if you look at them, part of it fall under the colony, and part of it fall under the protectorate. So how come it go just scan out? He say, government don't look at their land and they, it don't tell people and say, anybody where they, na that land they, forgo certify ownership of the land or else government go take in a hand. So before I bring you inside, I tell people they're waiting at this law where they use. Because when they make law, this law where they use, it is in contravention of the Land Commission Act 2023, where it puts responsibility for land management and disputes under a land commission. Okay, under the Unoccupied Lands Act, Unoccupied Lands Act 117, you get a definition of waiting an unoccupied land. Because this is a law where they may not pass before independence. Over 50 years ago. Over 60 years ago. How come for satisfy this particular move where government want to take their land here, then go use that law there? Where several laws and they we don't supersede some of the ordinance, because this is an ordinance, not an act of parliament. Because then and then at the crown be they make ordinance. Let make and clear for people them. under section 4 of that act, it say, for the purpose of the ordinance, all land shall be deemed to be unoccupied. In other words, they say, all land at the whole of, because when you talk about crown, this ordinance relates to the colony, not the protectorate. It say that land is unoccupied, and you get for proof, person get for proof say that they may use that land for cultivation, that it makes say the plant, or na they been tapped for habitation, or been used for collect or store water, or for any other industrial purpose like small industry, cottage industry, or for other purpose for do with agriculture. And you for proof say 12 years before this statute in 1960, now you get a land. Then he said the person get for claim, when they claim the land, get for produce instruments for say, him get possession. And he forgets certified copy showing a title to such land, extending over a period not less than 12 years prior to the commencement of this notice. So you see, so what are they try for proof now? How come government come all of a sudden can use a law which is over 60 years old for can tell people and say, in a camp for can show we say and I get a land, or else would they take an in hand? Okay. It talk about, and he give a 6-month deadline because he said in compliance with this law, the ministry don't set a 6-month notice period from 1st September 2025 to 28th February 2026, and all claimants must present supporting documents. Who do they give supporting documents? So that the same ministry, there is no other person where they give supporting documents. So the ministry, now for look at the register for no who that own the land and they. So why they can't tell the person say now if I bring supporting document? Then he say after February 2026, once the deadline they expire, all the land and they go survey them and register state land. And any unauthorized occupation will constitute trespassing and will be punishable under Sierra Leone law, including fine or imprisonment. Enforcement will involve the Sierra Leone police and the office of the Attorney General. So, from what you have explained, so sir, give me your legal opinion on this in terms of the application of the law, the contravention, the rights of occupancy, and the claim that all land in a Freetown or the colony na crown land. We don't get crown anymore. So by rights, that's this ordinance not for be even used. It has passed its sell-by date. And that Land Commission Act, when it passed 2023, should have negated this particular ordinance. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole lot wrong. This is the problem. The government just think because they're a government, they should not comply with laws. And these are the things I will keep this say. Parliament, even Parliament itself that passes laws, it's not above the law because the superior legal authority in our country, now the Constitution, we're not a part of legal history until recently after independence, because everything was being done under the common law. So now we get a situation where Minister Senecidi say all land belong to government. Only government, they appropriate or apportion land to people. Other than that, you cannot own a piece of land without having had the right to own it through the government, which I don't think that's the historical fact of possession or ownership of land. Then the way they draw the statute or the way captions 117 reads, and they talk about occupancy, then they use that synonymously with ownership. Well, we know say factually the two can coexist. Factually, the two can be contradictory. And factually, it could be one or the other. You can occupy a land when you own, but you occupy under two rights of possession. Either the rights under a lease or a leasing agreement. That's why you occupy the land, because you're leasing it or renting it from someone. Or you occupy the land because of the ownership right. So it seems to me what the Minister Senecidi say, since all rights or all land belonged to the government can strip you of the ownership of that land day at any time government feels like it. And these are dangerous moves. You see, because that will be taken undue advantage, because now government comes in, then just show them power. They're not going to go occupy the land based on some legal document, like a court order from the court say, these issues have been dealt with. The court finds, as a fact that the land used to be government. Historically, I don't think Minister Senesi is correct, that every land used to be owned by government. As far back as we know, from time immemorial, land, there is always private ownership of land. Because there were times when you don't get government where land was an issue at all. And the people owned land then. They had a different system of being the owner of a piece of land. Now they are telling people, you get for proof, forget legitimacy, you get forget certification. Like Mr. Mengot pointed out, well, where do you get this certification and everything from? At the very ministry where they try to take the land from you. So it will seem to me an independent commission has to be set up. Because otherwise, what's going to happen if Parliament passed the law, Parliament does sanction the breaking of sections of the Constitution in terms of protection of property and not to deprive people of their property without due process. Now then, they come up with a 6-month notice. If you are unable to come up with a notice, a convincing notice based upon the conditions within set, then you lose your land, even if it's been with the family generations. Okay? So the issue is, are these laws going to be challenged, or they're just going to let that go? And then you ask the question, is 6 months sufficient time? And waiting at the mechanism or the process by which you can come up. First of all, there is extreme vagueness in the whole law. You say come up with proof. What kind of proof will satisfy the government that you own the land? Therefore, specify that. Then it can be proof as a result of having credible witnesses who know the history of you, the person, or they claim the ownership of the land. It can be proof. And some of them land here, to this day, if you go to the Home Office in England, then get historical and foundation. But the ordinary man with a Songo, with a Newton, with a Poe, is he going to be able to get a lawyer who can do a research all the way back to the Home Office in England? Aren't you putting the people under undue burden for proof state and property that they own? Why is the government shifting the burden? Why can't the government and come up with the proof? The proof what the government able to come up with, and then they ask the people for come up with. The government says, show us now you get. Well, why can't the government prove, based on what Minister Senesi, the examples that we give, it should be easy for the government for proof, historically, factually, how the government get the land. They're not going to be able to either. The government itself is asking the people to do what itself cannot do. What the Minister Senesi say that then land in a government land? Show we. Prove them. Come up with documentary evidence for so saying a government get it. You're not going to be able to. But then you tell the poor people. And most of the people who own land in the area, they're poor. They're not going to get away with all to fight the government. So to me, this borders on the abuse of power. Again, it's up to the legal profession to stand up, and fight back and use the law, because the law and the instrument will get a constitution which lawyers are using very sparingly in our country. Lawyers are having difficulty using the constitution to fight the government, which is all we have. So, and the thing is, what people don't understand, if you allow the government to take away people and land at the Sogo area, what is going to stop any other government when they come for take land na Bo district, na Moyaba district, na Chonkolili district, na Bombali district? Because we enable the law for set very dangerous precedents. And the people when they come up with their ideas here, you wonder what's the motivation. Because they are the government, now they have possession of all the information leading to projects being anticipated, being dealt with for the country. So government on its own might know that some mineral resources then are a certain location, what the public is unaware of. They can come up with laws for deprive a family or an owner of a land under this policy wouldn't they come up with. If these laws are not challenged, that's the end of it. If people don't go lose the land, the whole... Yes, sir.
Mr. Shillon, for your own purpose, I read another thing, because these people just take this law from 60 years ago, bring and come this term, and I wonder you got much on this, because under that section where I talk about the ownership of land, then at section 4, subparagraph 2, let me read that for you. It talk about where the land forms part of these lands included, the one that were exempt. It said, where the person claiming the same is able to produce the instrument or instrument by virtue of which he is in possession thereof, that means that person nigga for show paper or register or certified copy.
And the people are talking about...
Let's show you who side. Now, hold on, let's show you which in the reference they make. The land forms part of the lands included in A, the public register and plan of town lots of Freetown. So, you get for then at the public register of town lots. Then before 1960, the public register and plan lot of town and country lots of bonds. This is not only colony. The public register and plan of town and country lots of York Island. And when the land is planted with banana, coffee, cocoa, gum, cola, plantain trees, or other trees of a permanent economic value. So in other words now, in my view, the government for proof say, then land and they no be no register under the Freetown plan. Because it said 12 years before the statute. So if you go 12 years behind, you talk about 1948.
Yeah.
Then at the same law, it say, within a period of 6 months after the posting of this notice, when at the same thing put in the Gazette in 2025, within a period of 6 months, right, it shall be lawful for all person claiming the land referred to in such section to send written notice to the Director of Surveys and Lands of their claims. And in such written notice, the claimant shall set out the extent and boundaries of the land claim. So you see, on the one hand, they tell you, say, okay, now you get for send written notice in 6 months. And that written notice day, it get for include whether that land they been registered in the colonial days, not the present days. We know how they keep record now. So this is a task, now, a very impossible task. And I not feel say, from what I read here, it's necessary for them to use this law if government want claim land. Government can claim land under existing law. And how they can claim it? They can claim it if you do it through the planning process. Say you want to use the land for something of national value. In that case, now appropriation of the land through negotiation with the landowner. But you can't say if that person did not show you paper, and the paper where you want to let the person show, not under the current register of land, but under the colonial system. So this law where they use is very faulty. I don't know what you think about that from which I read through.
Well, I think you're right, because like I say, it's violative of the section that talks about the protection of property and then the deprivation of the property without due process. So now, when you listen to that law, this Land Commission Act of 2023, they don't give government the power altogether and then impose on the people a time notice for, say, you prove to we, say, now you get a property. Otherwise, there's a presumption that the government get them. So instead of turning it around, because government get by far more ability for show proof that they own it, and then Minister Senesi make a declaration, say, all land from the beginning, I guess from the beginning of time, that government get them. Well, so it becomes the question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Before government existed, which came first, the land, or the government exists before land became available? So again, this is where the challenge is. We can't forget historical evidence, historical facts, because this possession of document or instrument within the talk board, all they're talking about now, waiting in the court conveyance is a deed. A deed will give you possession. Well, this deed issue is even not universal, even in our own country, because when you pass the Songo area, people still own land. Even though Minister Senesi talks say, well, the chief now get the authority. And then his definition of the duty of the headman, I'm not too sure if the man in duty is so clearly defined. And this colonial idea, it strikes me as anything where the Constitution doesn't permit. I don't even understand how they maintain their laws there from colonial days as being relevant. I think they are happening because people are not challenging them. They're not going to court. Because then laws there they violate. And I think the British people, they did the best for make sure say they not dispossess people of their land, of their property. They did their best. But we now, we do the best for dispossess people of their property by coming up with requirements that they know very well the people are not going. First of all, to do what they ask the people and so, then can't forget lawyer. Secondly, there is not going to be availability of documentary evidence of owning some of their land there, but they may have historical evidence that this is not land we don't own for generations. And like I say, there may be also evidence in the Home Office in England, because the British, as we know them, there are lots and lots and lots of historical evidence in the Home Office concerning Freetown and the colony. Okay, but the people who own their land and they cannot afford to get lawyers them, hire a lawyer in England or hire a young lawyer them, but the law schools them, we get 4 law schools or more, they can come up with some pilot project in which they will give the student credit and use Google and other means to research some of them things here with the government they talk about. One, is the government on solid grounds legally which I don't think. And two, whether the government gets any basis to demand that within 6 months, if people are unable to come up with proof of ownership, which they know the people are unable to, then government will take their land back. And when government take their land back, now for the use and purpose of what? What we're seeing the trend. Some of their land they are going to take, not for preserve for future generation, now for turn around and sell them to big organizations them. Take the people in land, sell them to big organizations, under the guise of coming to do business, to open plantation, to open factories, some of which never materialize. And then there goes a whole historic piece of property being lost. So, I mean, but again, we keep doing that over and over. And the government not facing a challenge. So this is the problem we're getting now. So this land policy, well, in the talk about, shifting the burden on people who own their land. They get historical. They can go to court and present historical evidence, maybe oral evidence, not documentary, but they can able get present evidence, which I think the government itself cannot even contradict. If a family go to court and say, well, my great grandpapa or grandparents and then beyond such and such a land, and here is how it came about. They may be able to prove, and that way the government itself cannot prove. But this presumption that anything where you know we're able to prove so that you get them, now government get them, I think it's unconstitutional. It's depriving people of their property without due process. And I don't think a 6-month notice or gazetted notice is adequate, is sufficient. I think they should be talking about notice much longer than that for enable people then for talk to lawyers, for enable, and the law schools then can make that part of the project, for getting students then, for get extra credit, because you see we are everything at exam. But this will be a worthwhile project for law students then for get passing grades, for research some of them background here of them property then they, and see which are really owned by certain families. Because this trend does begin for quite a while, where government comes to town, then begin for dispossess people them at the York, Songo area of property where they don't own for generations. And it's grossly unfair. You see, it's grossly unfair. And all the government is do is just lay back and say, well, prove to us that you get them.
Okay, you know? Mr. Sheila, one thing, let's go back to the law, right? And where it's a legal conundrum. Let's go back to the definition of unoccupied land. That's section 4 where I talk about. It says for the purpose of this ordinance, all land shall be deemed to be unoccupied, where it is not proved by the person claiming the same that the beneficial use thereof for cultivation or inhabitation. So in other words, if I can prove, say, my family then don't build us that land, and it get for be 12 years before the statute or the ordinance, which is 1960. If I able to show, say, this we be non did it
before 1948.
Minus the register, it means we are in possession of that land. So I don't see the relevance of this statute where they use for make this gazette notice. You're not going to use 1960 ordinance for justify government claiming ownership of land, because let's look at how the administration been there, right? Just like when the minister talk about chiefdom in the colony, them places in have been villages. Songo have been village, Newton have been village, right? And under them place then they then get demand them. and you begin rural council. So states no begin no business for do with land allocation or land management. So using that crown land chronology or definition is a false narrative. And I want the lawyer to prove me wrong. Because the law clearly say, you get for sure say you don't use that land 12 years prior to the ordinance. The ordinance is 1960. So we don't know what's in the purpose of this thing. So that is my point.
And that's
unless you get any further thing for clarify, then we will talk about now, because let we look at again this issue of land and government housing policy and the entire things, because all this can to what they call land use planning, structural plan, town and country planning, because this ministry, the Ministry of Land, Housing and Country Planning. And is there a structural plan for the Freetown Western region? Because now they go do demarcation of land, now they go talk about allocation of land, zoning, and even for housing. And in all this, where does the local authority come in? Because the local authority, they get some kind of administration. So the same way the chiefdoms are administered by the chiefs, where go do anything at chiefdom for land without consult the chief. Now the same way, just like how they don't make under the Land Commission Act, government cannot go and interfere in land ownership without the District Land Commission, where actually comprises of members of the local authority and traditional rulers. So the act when passed 2023, in my view, don't negate this ordinance. I don't know what you feel.
No, I agree with you, because the ordinance now pre-independence, when it passed one day, and then, like I say, everything is governed by the Constitution. So everything has to have passed constitutional muster before, but we treat all ordinances, past and present, as constitutionally okay, which they are not. So this law, we talk about the Land Commission Act, and then this Section 4, subsection 2, all now and then. The only way it can be, well, first of all, I think the government is going about it the wrong way, because people are going to lose their rights, we don't get for generations, and people may be able to prove that prior to 1948, they had possession and use, but a good many of them may not be able to prove it documentarily, which did. They have to be able to do historical presentation, or maybe some of them, given the opportunity, given the financial means, may be able to get documents from the Home Office, because some of the documents we pertain to Sierra Leone are documents of which can be found in England, in the Home Office. So, but it looks like what the government is doing, they're just using sheer power. We're not the government, we can do and say and act in any way we feel, whether it's constitutional or not. But this is just a supposition or an assumption. The only way we can test that, now for the lawyers them for go to work, the law schools them for go to work, try for represent them people, and because even in America we see that. When I was in law school, there were lands being taken by wealthy white people, lands being taken by the government from blacks. So I remember in law school, we had what you call a land prevention program. That was part of curriculum, but it was optional for being involved, for trying to protect them people here. So let them not keep losing the land, because they were losing land at a very fast rate. So the law schools them can do that. But again, the thing is about asking the law schools them for do that, it's a matter of concept. Because if you pattern the teaching at the law schools them with some of the curricula what we get in America, that might make sense. But if we now want if the education just only be classroom education, which then teach the student them, then they learn and take exam and pass, nothing with respect to public interest, So that may not help. And if the students are not made aware that part of this profession is to protect the rights of others and the poor and the disabled, so they become the future attorneys general, they become the future judges. They may not have any consciousness with respect to defending that area there. And in the long run, we are going to shortcut generations. And people tend to think like, okay, Sierra Leone may only exist for another 100 years and that's the end of it. But the reality is, if Sierra Leone, which I'm sure, for the next 1 million years, as long as it is part of the world, will continue to exist. So what foundation are we laying now with respect to generations and generations to come? If we just make laws for those suit present condition, not to laws to withstand the test of time. So the whole thing, to me, the law is oppressive. It can be tackled from the Sierra Leone constitutional point of view in many ways. It's unconscionable, it's unreasonable, the notice period is unreasonable, it's insufficient, and the burden is being shifted. People can go to court and challenge that for saying, let the government prove their ownership of the land. No, don't put that burden on the people. But how do we go about it when Parliament itself is struggling and the Attorney General's office is struggling with respect to what it can or cannot do? But I don't see how the people are being protected, because we read a lot about land laws. So is this just a way of trying to deprive people and making it a law, a legitimate way? Let me read a comment. If a land ownership issue started with the European colonies who stole more land than they bought, well, okay, I don't want to raise an issue. Because if it is factual that they stole more land, what did they do with the land? We don't have colonial people anymore. The same way our ancestors sold land to foreigners is the same way we are selling land now. I don't know what to make of it. Is that good or bad? Should we continue selling land the same way we ancestors and sold land? And this person to make this comment, if we're ancestors and sell land, then it contradicts Minister Senesi in assertion that all land belongs to the government if we're ancestors and sold land. So, but for whatever, Mr. Mengot, I don't know what you understand about from this question, but I don't want to
well, the point is, one thing we have to know, because if you look at the Act back, let's go back to the Act. Cap 117.
May I interrupt you,
If
Mr.
that
Mengot?
had been crown land,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
if it was crown land, when we been get crown land, we been get Department of Surveys and Lands under the colonial system. So the Department of Surveys and Lands then get ordinance survey which show usai na communal land and usai na crown land. Read that. I think there's another comment we can read before I continue.
Okay, so the historical documents of the colony are found at the National Archives in the UK, where it's called the Home Office. Mr. Mengot, if you can share our email with recommend some historical authors that documented these facts since 1859. In other words, if I may read it again, The historical documents of the colony are found at the National Archives in the United Kingdom. Mr. Mengot, if you can share our email with me, or your email, because a letter is missing, your email with me, recommend some historical authors that documented this fact since 1859. I don't know, what's your understanding of it?
Well, I think, sir, I thank that caller, that person that will make that comment there. I'm sure we have our websites, which you can share, and also if you can link in our website. But if you want me on personal email, I'm quite willing for give them, where if something this na issue will continue, because this land case not to one, because the second part will go and talk about na, but this new policy where they talk about this conocoping between Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Lands, because there's a lot of loopholes into that. But for my personal email, I'm sure you can send it to me for basis of this program is Akomengot, Akowena me middle name, that's AKOMENGOT @gmail.com. I repeat, AKOMENGOT @gmail.com. Then next program, if you say whatever you send, perhaps it will be a topic for discussion. So the other thing I want to say,
let me interrupt you, Mr.
under
Mengot.
we laws them, government can do what you call compulsory purchase order, CPO, based on my knowledge of planning. By the way, I have a master's degree in urban planning, so I know they talk out of my nose. You know, and I don't work in a planning department here and several other places. Compulsory purchase order, now when the government want use a land, whether it be communal land or private land for development purpose, if the government will come out plain and say, okay, then land here will they look what they call unoccupied land, or one determine waiting on unoccupied land. We want to reclaim them.
Mr.
For
Mengot, may I interrupt you, please?
Yes, sir.
I mean, there has been a caller holding. If you don't mind, you touch a little bit later, we'll just take that call there.
No problem.
Okay. Hello, caller. What's your name inside the call from?
Yes, Mr. Mengot, Mr. Ceylon, thank you. Alpha C, I call from Anchorage, Alaska.
From Alaska. Welcome, Mr. Sise. Thanks for calling.
Yes, sir. I got a question about urban planning and development. How now Alaska also they where they started with Cook Inlet housing, where a kind of housing way then developed low-income families in 1974. They also developed that same year Section 8, voucher program from low-income families. From 1974 to now, we have over 1,000 homes for low-income family. That's not we then the deal. And also they provide voucher program. They know you will build houses for people, but they give them the voucher for the rent, any other side they want rent. Based on that. So my question now what they ask the locust housing and saloon. When they build them and from when they build them, do we have any additional housing, locust housing or for help local family? If locust housing project get any voucher system will also help families that we don't get money for pay rent or help them with the rent, or they try to build more houses. From when they build the house and they local housing, do we have additional houses every year from that time when they build them to now? I rest my case when I check it. God.
All right. Thank you so much for calling. Mr. Mengot, go ahead, sir.
Do we have any other caller? Because I want to...
No. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, when it comes to housing, because that's very interesting, Sierra Leone, we get a Sierra Leone Housing Corporation, which was established in 1982. Right? The Sierra Leone Housing Corporation is a department under the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning. When from 1982, when the government agency for housing development, construction, investment management. And if we don't get until 1982 to now, what are the purpose of that corporation then? Do we have a housing strategy? They don't come to the housing the housing policy we'll get na salon. The housing policy we'll get na salon now under the National Development Plan. Sierra Leone National Development Plan. And that Sierra Leone National Development Plan day, now talk about housing. But Sierra Leone, we're very good at planning. But when it comes to implementation, now they will get problems. So up till now, when you talk about land, as I've been saying, you have to talk about housing, you have to talk about availability of housing. Let's look at Freetown, for instance. Let's look at the structural plan for Freetown. Because if you want to do housing development in the Western region, where I would say that the most populous region of the country, we get so many slums around, but then we don't get no structural plan for the Western region. Because when you get a structural plan, you can forget area where you set aside for residential housing. And when you talk about residential housing, when you develop housing, not just housing no more, you have to look at the amenities where they are around the housing there. Health facilities, schools, markets, business center, you know. So we don't say we go call the army or Ministry of Defense for letting can collaborate with the Ministry of Lands for promote housing development. Who said that they come in? You cannot do housing development without the local authority. Because the local authority must have a role. And also, the same MOU will sign. Then talk about housing policy, Ministry of Defense, for work with Ministry of Lands, for develop housing policy, for improve national housing stock. Let me bring other agencies then for come inside. What about NASSIT? The National the NASSIT will get the Social Insurance Trust. Remember say at one time they said Binonka with this housing issue. They mean build some NASSIT housing around Godrich, Regimaniel. Those houses were initially the idea was for say their houses and they now for target people then from diaspora. But they were way above the reach of the average Sierra Leonean. Even people from the diaspora. The president, the charge, you there America. Think about who say you did for go spend $250,000 to $500,000. Look at the quality of housing you get compared to the one they would then give it. You know? So it's as if they have no strategy. Right? If we look at NASSIT now, NASSIT now they invest, now we market. The one where they na
Sewa market.
Victoria Park. Yeah. Sour grounds. And then say they want to do more markets elsewhere. Why not NASSIT come out with a plan? Because if you do your social contribution, go into affordable housing for people that when they contribute to the NASSIT. So you can give them opportunity for housing ownership, either part rent, part mortgage, or set up a system. We get housing finance bank na salon. But how many people they can afford for get loans? Because if you get a loan for bills or for take mortgage, you get forget collateral. Let's look at the average salary and people then disposable income. Then in the talk say, this collaboration with the military now for create new cities for decongest Freetown. So it's all mixed up and boxed up. Using tracts of state land. We don't talk about the issue of state land. So is it a hidden agenda for say the land here where they were appropriate under this old 1960 Act? Nothing the way they want to use now say they want to build local housing. Let's not call it local housing. Let's say social housing because the target are civil servants. Even the army itself, let's be honest. Not to all army men, they are barracks. You don't get enough accommodation for military personnel. The same with police. So, who say army man can say for can contribute to housing development? We get private people that will come. Recently, we get the man from Gambia, the Taff Estate. I don't see Taff in Gambia. That Taff Estate, they will know it happen. Then the other two, then they talk about, they say they want to use the army for acquire state land and illegal occupancy. So you can see the agenda.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At the same time, where they talk about unoccupied land, the same way you go sign memorandum of understanding with the military, one of the responsibility, now for say for can use the army man them, right, for secure state land. That is not the role of the army. If you declare a land a state land, that is why we have the Ministry of Lands. When they demarcate the land, you get the AG's office, and if somebody occupy the land, you go court, you get a court order, you bring bailiffs, then can inside. But this idea of anything will bring military can inside. You want fetch kush, you bring military can inside. I think we are abusing the army. That is my view. The army get better role for do. If you say, okay, you want to use engineering corps for build bridges,
yeah,
for this you feed Salon program, that is appropriate.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to bring them for help with road construction, that is appropriate. For God's sake, we still go to the Chinese them for build roads. So if we want to get the army, then another thing, we get what you call MACP, na Salon. Military assistant to civilian police. Then they become as a result of some of them kuskas they don't get. Now everything, what way policeman they do, you get forget me, man. Is this the right approach? That is my concern. If we get forget an housing policy, as I say, the other issue, now look at what exists. Very few people they know say, we get another law na Salon. These are the things government can do. We then call the Salon Rent Restriction Act, Cap 52. Where na act for regulate rental prices and protect tenants from exploitation. That is some of the things where government can do immediately. Because when you look at the housing increase, even Pambody now where you go rent Pambody, landlord they ask for 2-year rent. Let me put it in perspective. You get Pambody where they go ask you for 5,000 new leons. When are 5 million. So if they ask you for 2-year rent, when are 10,000 new leons or 10 million. And minimum wage now 800 leons. How come the average man go able pay 2 months rent in a 2-year rent in advance? These are some of the things government could look into. Because this is a law where they talk about fair rent practice. And also the system us in the country where na dollar than they charge. At one time we don't get some say they not for charge anything in dollar. But you look at us the way then they advertise. The man go tell you say $2,000, $3,000. Who then they rent the us then they charge. So we get to get proper housing policy. First, look at protection of the citizens. Look at the land we use, if not communal land. Look at the design of the land, the design of the housing, things like building code we don't get. These are issues where they talk about housing. Because look at how many hosts then they collapse. When they talk about iron rod them, the quality of building, right? Who say they designate before we get residential area, then place like Dwazak, you know, and that other Belia Park. These were residential areas. But now, all long-term mixed development. Shops on all over the country. So we too for do a proper structural plan, right? Look at the existing housing stock. Look at the rights of citizens. That was we talk about colonial days. Under the colony, now we get locust housing.
Correct.
Since we get independent, we not get any locust housing.
No.
Even when you check, even housing for civil servants, we get places the way judges them in the bill for them. Around that spot loop. Then you know there again, if you look around the Hill Court Road area, you get government hosts the way they don't left abandoned. All that in a day. So is there a housing policy? Are we right about providing social amenities for civil servants, for teachers, for even the very army man there when they say army for build the host there? So over to you, sir.
Yeah, well, in terms of housing, the very army man we talk about, I'm willing to bet you over 90% of them, over 90%, at the end of their term of service as soldiers, will not have a house, no matter how small, of their own, because their salary not going to provide the ability for them to be able to save any amount of money for the future. So when we talk about housing plan, if the intention is sincere, they're not getting a surreptitious motive for take land them and dispose of them and then they talk about creating new spaces or new cities, which I think is a monumental task. Otherwise, they're going to end up creating more slums than they can ever imagine if they put their hand punching the land the way they know. Because you talk about if you try to expand the city or create new settlement area, it has to be done with the assistance of people whose specialty that is, not to people whose idea that is. Because when we start talking about new location, relocating people, it's monumental intellectually, it's monumental financially, it's monumental socially. So you need sociologists, you need financiers, money managers, and there's a whole lot. So I don't know what these guys have in mind when they come up with an ambitious idea here, and I think that they take into account. Otherwise, you would just create more slums instead of beautifying the country. You will make things looking worse, which of course it has several components to it. When things don't improve, health becomes endangered. And with that, crime becomes prevalent. Safety becomes risky, and so on. So when they talk about their ambitious goals, they had them to take all foresee the connection. Because one thing will lead to the other. So even when they talk about like when they talk about affordable housing or when they talk about low income housing, the last time we got into low income housing, which was what the British then set up for enable with civil servant them for live decently while working, we not improve the system. See, this is the disappointing part of it. We turn around and just sell the place instead of improving and expanding. We don't do none of that. And even when they talk about this housing, now, if the idea is to encourage people who will not get the money, then the banks have to be involved. Loans have to be made. And Mr. Mengot mentioned something about part rent, part equity. How is that going to be structured? That if you rent now 500,000 or Leone a month, how much of that should be for rent? We will take care of maintenance and all of that of the building. And how much of that should be applied to equity as far as ownership of that building day or that property that we occupy. These are some of the things government for beginning to think of. So the man will occupy or the family will occupy that place there, they get a future for look up to, even if the breadwinner dies, and family can continue for live there and still get equity interest in the property and being able to sell it to the extent of their equity ownership in the property to others. So I don't know how much of that is being put into the planning, but if everything is just going to be politically thought of as to how that gives advantage to the rich or the party strong men them, it will backfire. It's not going to work. It's just going to create more problem. And we don't need to go far. If we want for land, if we could swallow with pride, we can go to Gambia, who used to be understudying us. Now it's okay for we to understudy them. My understanding about Gambia, they barely have, if at all, any slums. And their approach to housing is more structured, and better enforced. So we can go to Gambia and try for land from them. Nothing wrong. Your student can become your teacher at some point. So once upon a time, they looked up to us. But now we can swallow with pride and look up to them and say, well, how will they manage? We not only get tourism as our main resource or our main source of funding for everything we have to do, but when I seem to be managing very well, when our money even get more value than we will get everything from bauxite to gold to iron ore to chromite, to everything, you name it, coffee, cocoa, piassava, all of that, coltan. We not seem to be able to do anything with what we get. It's okay for us to go back and try to see waiting in the land over a period where we know land yet. But I'm sure people and seem to know that, but the selfishness is not giving them the chance to do what they have to do for the country. That's what I can say. I don't believe we are so uninformed that we cannot do something as basic. But what see, we get nothing but contempt for the poor. We don't get any empathy. It's okay for us to ride in the nice cars, live in the nice neighborhoods. Everybody they answer, we yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That seems to be with pride more so than trying to do something for humanity and for community. And then Minister and Senator says something. I see one of the definition of land is a community land. Now be land where the government give people in for school or for community use. I don't think so, because we do know as a historical fact that there were private people who were dedicating land to people, for community purpose, private land. That's what government give their history. History where people let me take their private land, dedicate them for cemetery, whether for community use, dedicate them for educational purpose, or then dedicate them for community use. So it's not true that it was government that was giving those land for those purposes. Private people in the Western area, there's plenty of history about that. And even up country, because I went to school, I went to Ahmadiyya Secondary School in Bo that had a vast amount of land that was given to the Ahmadis when they came. They were very poor. By locals, them will get large amount of land. We'll give them their land. Say, yeah, we're gladly on account for education, we're picking them, you know, for letting them get secular education, you know. So I'm not so sure about Minister Senesi in your definition of what community land constitutes. Let me read a comment. Those who have historical evidence should challenge the government because the archives in UK has records of land given to free slaves and captives. It's true. It's true. The law schools should be primarily be helpful in this regard. If they get any sense, if the legal profession should have any meaning, and if there should be any nobility attached to the legal profession, that should be a task for which credit can be allotted to the law student then for research, then, and we'll get better means of research now than the old days. The average speaking a Maguroka and a Bo and anywhere can do research and get all some of the information over the traffic about. As a law school task or something to get credit for extra credits, because this fall right into the legal profession. So that's another thing. Let me read this. This is nothing but illegal land grabbing by the government, which will be challenged in court because they have no legal right. But this person is saying which will be challenged. This my issue is the government is not being challenged. So I don't think it will be challenged. I hope it does. I hope they will. That's what I'm urging people in for. Do more of the challenges in court. Preempt that. Start off with an injunction. Ask the court for injunction relief because irreparable harm will be done if the court doesn't issue an injunction. Because once they take you, somebody said, Mr. Mengo, check your email. Mr. Mengo, check your email. Somebody may have sent you an email. So, but the law schools, I'm urging the law schools, get a system whereby law students can be given credit, form a land loss committee of which students then can participate and do research and get credit, and, you know, get a director for the program. These are some of the creative ways in America here that can be done. Way not to everything for those who cram legal theories, rule against perpetuity, rule in Dumpers case, you know, and declaration of against interest, all kinds of legal theory. There is more to it because we talk about actual occurrences that need the involvement of the legal profession. So I'm strongly encouraging the law schools to get interest in those things. We are resource cursed in Sierra Leone. It may appear that way, but luckily Google works universally. And those who run the law schools, the directors of these schools and everything, they should come up, they should add to the curriculum things of this sort, because these are the challenges of the moment. What would submit for the good of society and the good of community. So I urge the deans, the directors, whatever they call them in Sierra Leone, to put that as part of the program for the young lawyers then. May they know say they too owe a duty to protect the unborn and the future of people in the country. You know? So that's what I want to say in this regard. Mr. Mingot, back to you, sir.
Well, all I got for say, I just checked my email. I see a caller sent me some reference to the handbook of Sierra Leone, where it give a lot of historical facts, where I'll get for say thank you to that caller. and I go actually digest them, and I go make them a topic for discussion. Because the point is, I think it was dedicated to His Excellency Sarah Alexandra Ransford Slater. If all my member, Slater na been a governor na Salone. So I must tell that caller, they thank you. And as I can say, this is the reason we dey get them program here for exchange ideas. We know they care for bash government, but they care for land. For let we educate each other. I mean, Mr. Shillon, when I'm a co-presenter, he don't go way past the proverbial 10. When I in the Bible give it 70 years, and it's still going strong. I am slowly getting there, as the Latin phrase say, festina lente, hasting slowly. Next year, before next year, by this year, I go don't pass 70. So glad he say now in modern age, them program how they do, it will be archives. But could people they not ask me, say, why I not go make, write a book? But let other person tell the story. But for now, we say thank you. But this issue of land grabbing, this issue of planning, because if we remember, when we get a ministry, again, the company ministry they will get. If you remember, after independence, we will get Ministry of Housing and Country Planning.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
By that designation, Housing and Country Planning, it showed the relationship between country planning and housing when a fundamental right. I see somebody else send statement. I don't know if you can read that for me.
Yeah, I can read it. This is where the Law Society can come to rescue of the ordinary citizens' protections and prevent disenfranchisement of the people. So, meaning the Law Society get a role for play. Just like how they urge the lawyers, them, and the civil society, they can just not be on the sideline and let the government bulldoze its way into unfairly grabbing people's property that may have been in a family for generations, just because a minister or a politician who may have some kind of not some kind of interest, allow it to happen, use them power for create a huge loss of property, which will be in violation of the Constitution in terms of property ownership. There's another comment. This minister is backing up the wrong tree because records will show that all the land in the colony had family owned to utilize after coming from the Americas and the black poor from London. So sometimes some of them comments here, they get for grasp the essence of the comment. So let me read it one more time. This minister is backing up the wrong tree, meaning he's heading in the wrong direction, because records will show that all the land in the colony were family owned. And I would say to preserve, the paraphrase now, to utilize after coming from the Americas and the black poor from London. Whatever meaning we can attach to that, But the fact that I appreciate people calling in and listening in, sending in written comments, but people also can call in if they have, we get phone numbers, you can call in and be able to give you feeling, but sending in comments are also just as good. Yeah, but you can tell that people are taking interest in the thing, because the precedent is what is dangerous. If you allow the government to begin take land in this form, then just to use sheer power, they not to follow the law themselves. And then shifting responsibility, telling the people the presumption is that you don't own the land unless you can prove to us, which is, and then they can say, okay, it's a rebuttable presumption. But show we say that you get them. But for right now, we do presume say it's government property, okay? And if you can go about doing it, yours. So we really have to stop that trend there. I hope the lawyers will get involved. Let me go back to Mr. Mengot.
Well, Fambula, we don't come to almost the end of the program. From what you call it and say, two things I want to say now. And Mr. Shilon said go back. Number one, people talk about somebody, they will comment about the Law Society. Recently, I've been the show, check the social media trend, and one of the lawyers in Atong, Hashim Yada Williams, who coincidentally I met him for the first time this year when I go salon, go celebrate me alma mater. He talked about the fraction within the law profession. Say the bar for comeback and look at how the relationship between the bar association and the law society. So the one they win are the people they win are the law, we themselves self-defect by themselves, they not agree themselves, which hope we the citizens then get. We also see a situation, the issue of them property in Black Johnson, the one for deal with the Chinese facility where they build, the fish harbor. People in their way even provide documents saying that they get them property in areas that will not be surveyed. Government ignore them. The judiciary and the courts know they do a favor. And I will go back and I will urge everybody when they listen to this program for go get the Land Commission Act of 2023. We talk about how we for manage land. We talk about how for settle disputes and all that thing. It's so well for law, they make all them lawyer, get all them policy here. We get the big five agenda. Even when they talk about the big five agenda, if you want to talk about feed the nation, now land involved. Most of the things that they talk about for improve, now land involved. This idea of decongesting Freetown for create new city. Waiting to Freetown congested, you get a pull and a push factor. Freetown is a very small area in the country. Why not go to other regions? We don't talk about devolution and decentralization. Develop other regions. Create industries there.
Who attract people.
Make people that are attracted to them place than they,
exactly.
So they can go there because they'll get a cleaner environment. They'll get access to social amenities. And they know where they're Freetown. Me, before I left Freetown, I work in civil aviation. I've been there Lunge before I come, when I've been working at air traffic control. To me, Lunge was paradise. I get good government quarter. I get land where I can plant me cassava and plant me small thing. I can go down now, go get me fish. I don't want the Lunge, I don't want the Freetown. But now go and look at Lunge. The last time I go there, I was very surprised. Lunge don't become overdeveloped, unstructured, and just as bad as Freetown. So, and Lunge is one of the places where they want to say they want to make the second city. Where already you don't get no planning, you don't get no structural planning, you don't get nothing. All you get now the Wangre airport, even the access road to the airport, it's an eyesore. So now that no more I get for say, and we'll go visit this topic again, and I say I will tell that caller thank you. I go look at that document. And then we will come back. Before I stop now, I think we have one more comment where you go read, and I feel say we've actually enlightened people. This is an eye-opener. And this housing issue, whether it comes to rent protection, whether it comes to providing affordable housing, whether it comes to land issue, that's something where they affect every individual. So over to you, sir. If you can read this last comment and then you give final word, then I feel to say we'll actually do small justice to this issue.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Mengot. These things say, because sometimes I never understand what in the commentators then get in mind. But for the Creoles of Sierra Leone in particular, comma, they have multiple homes around the world. I cannot extrapolate the intent of the persuasion and what is he trying to say. But for the Creoles of Sierra Leone in particular, they have multiple homes around the world. Who have multiple homes around the world? The Creoles or the government officials? I don't know. But in conjunction with that, I just want to add one quick thing to because there is this theory that government get the power, for expropriate land, just take people and land. No, that is not without a structure. It is true that generally speaking, government can take private property for public good. That is true. But it doesn't mean government can take it without just compensation. And just compensation mean if they take your land, even if not the street, then they expand, for whatever reason that the government, that you, the owner, can challenge the government's intention. The government get the duty for go and convince to court. This is why I keep emphasizing the involvement of the court. But the way to get a court involved, your first move is to get what you call injunctive relief. There's a thing in law called injunction. You ask the court, say, please, 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 court, step in here. Some damage is about to be caused by the other party, who could be the government, who could be irreparable, meaning we cannot repair that damage if you allow the government to proceed. So without getting into the merits or the facts of the dispute or the potential dispute, would ask you, the court, for issue a stay order for cease and desist, and give it time for object and oppose and get a hearing on the basis why we no want for let government take we land. Government can go in a court, then convince the court, if we want to run a good democracy, for say, well, this land is for this purpose, we just not want to take them, we take them for the general good, and here are the factors involved. Then the judge is giving all the facts, or the court is giving the facts. Then the court will make an assessment and come up with a proper ruling based on the merit of the pros and cons. And if the loser doesn't feel content, they should have the right to appeal. Then one aspect of this legal theory is called eminent domain. The government in power to appropriate land for government use. You see? So, but we're not to say government under any circumstance or every circumstance just because they are government and get the power. That power there is not without some restraint, which can only be governed by the courts. You see, then also the restriction that government can't take your land, then they pay you marketable price. So if you land now 1 acre, it worth 10 million Leone, just for an example. The government cannot come in and say, well, now 5 million Leone we want for pay. We land in that area, they go for 1 acre for 10 million. You also have a legitimate reason to have the court to intervene because they are trying to take your land for public good, and then they want to underpay you. So then all them theories here, then get restrictions, then get boundaries. So we just understand, say, government get absolute power. Anything, as soon as you mention government, you should be able to just do it as you feel and as you wish. And we all know, say, the motives of some of the government officials then are ill motives, in the sense that not for the good of country, not for the good of community, and for the good of individuals then just they use them power for twist the law, for bend the law to suit their convenience. So there are a lot of things wrong here. But if you don't stand up for one man, all you do is enable the government. But people need to begin to understand, say, even Parliament passes illegal laws and their laws can be challenged. Parliament is not get absolute power to pass any kind of law. I've said this over and over and over and over. But you wouldn't see challenges being raised, and we'll let these people get away with it. And as long as we continue that, it will keep on going in that direction until, when I was a young man growing up, there were lawyers who stood up for society, like lawyer T.S. Johnson, who stood up for the common man. If you commit serious crime and you deserve legal representation, you can't afford a lawyer, an able lawyer, T.S. Johnson was there. T.S. Johnson represented the opposition, and he made a difference in society. So sometimes one man can make a difference. I know people need to go back and read and learn about T.S. Johnson. To me, the most admired lawyer that Sierra Leone ever produced, T.S. Johnson. He not become a QC for political reason, but he was a man who had a calling for the profession. So with all of that said, I'm glad when I listen to we, when I make my own suggestions. So I will say good night for myself, and Mr. Mengot will close the show for we.
Well, Fambulem, thank you very much. And as I say again once more, I enjoy the collaboration, and the document where they send me, I get a lot for land. And hopefully, this is not the end of November. We will start that festive month. From my own perspective, as a man way concerned about safety, and I for look after myself. For the end way they go holiday, go visit their friends and family. We wish them safe journey. And let us also make sure, say, like we brother and cousin, they're waiting at the other side of the pond, when at the Atlantic. Make sure, say, you get everything right, all your legal documents right before you left. Because now, as Creole can say, do doti. We don't see waiting the apple. We are waiting that man way. That trumpet they blow all the time can do. So we don't want all your life what you don't work for, like just lost overnight. So until we meet again next week, I will say tata.
So that